Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's lesson. The past couple lessons have been working with transformations of quadratic equations. Today, we're going to go back and forth between quadratic equations and their graphs. Let's just go into presentation mode here. And so our learning goals per day, there are two. The first one is I can create a graph from a quadratic equation. And then the second one is going the other way. I can create an equation from a quadratic graph. And I'm going to do an example for each of these, and then you're going to give them a go. So first one, sketch a graph from an equation. So let's have an example here. So describe the properties of the parabola with the equation y equals 2 times x minus 4 squared minus 3, and then sketch a graph of the parabola. Okay, so first we're going to take a look at the equation. So we're going to sketch a graph. Our goal is to sketch a graph of this equation. And we're going to compare this equation to the general quadratic equation in vertex form. So y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So let's take a look what each of our letters is and what does that mean when we're trying to sketch a graph. So our A is 2. That means the graph is going to be stretched vertically by a factor of 2. That means our new step pattern is going to be 2, 6, 10. Remember, the regular step pattern is over by 1, up by 1, over by 1, up by 3, over by 1, up by 5. So because A is 2, we're going to multiply the up by part by 2. So that gives us the new step pattern. A also tells us if the graph is going to open up or down. Because A is positive, the graph is going to open up. Okay. Now the vertex, that's a nice thing about this form is this is vertex form. We can pick the vertex right out by knowing what h is and what k is. So the vertex is given by the coordinate h comma k. So h in this case is positive 4, because notice how they both have negatives. So you take out the positive 4, and k is negative 3. So that's where the vertex is. Okay, the axis of symmetry is x equals the h value of the vertex. So x equals 4 is going to be where the axis of symmetry is. So this is going to be your first step. When you're given an equation and you need to graph it, you're going to write down what each of your letters are, and that's going to help us graph it. So let's go to that part. So I've written down the important information that we need. So we need to know where the vertex is, when we need to know what the step pattern is. And I put graph will open up just so we know which way the step pattern goes, that if it goes up or down. So the first thing we're going to do is plot our vertex. So at 4 and negative 3, remember the first number is always your x value and your second number is always your y. And remember, x is horizontal and y is vertical. So 4 and negative 3, we're going to put a dot there. Now we're going to put where the axis of symmetry is, just so that will help us plot some points. So x equals 4. I do a dotted line for the axis of symmetry. Now we're going to use the step pattern to plot additional points. So my first step is over by 1, up by 2. So if I go to the right by 1, up by 2, I'm going to put another point there. And there's going to be a point symmetric about the axis of symmetry. Or you can think I'm going to go over to the left by 1, up by 2. And then my next one is over by 1, up by 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to put a point there. And then there's going to be another point over here, symmetric about the axis of symmetry. And that's enough points to graph a parabola. You can see the shape there. So now you're going to put in a nice smooth curve, and don't forget to put arrows at the end of your curves. Now, normally I would have the curve extend above these points, but I couldn't figure out how to do that to make it look decent. So you can just imagine that. And that's all you need to do. So you need to pick out the important information, your vertex, your step pattern, and which way the graph will open. And you'll use those numbers and information to plot your points to sketch the graph. So let's go the other way. So write an equation for a graph. So let's say we have this graph and some points are labeled here for us just to make it nice and easy to see. So what you're going to do, again, you're going to pull out some important information, then you're going to create the equation. So let's see, the vertex is going to be helpful. So the vertex is 1 comma 5. So that means our h value is 1 and our k value will be 5. And the parabola opens down, so a is going to be a negative number. And we're going to use that to check that we're getting the correct a in a little bit here. So what I'm going to do first is sub in my h and k values into our general vertex form for quadratics. So I'm going to put 1 in for h and 5 in for k to give us this equation. Now, we need to figure out what a is. So to do that, we're going to sub in a point from the graph to use for x and y. Let's go here. Now this point is nice and tidy for us, so you want to use a point that goes through an intersection some way so it's nice and easy to see. You cannot use the vertex because you already used it, so you have to use another point. So you could also use 2 and 2, but I'm going to use 0 and 2. So I'm going to put 0 in for my x and 2 in for my y. So remember, this was our equation from the last slide, and now I'm going to put 0 in for x, 2 in for y, and now we can do some math to solve for a. So 0 minus 1 is negative 1 squared. So negative 1 squared is just 1. So this equation becomes 2 equals a plus 5. To get a by itself, we need to subtract 5 on both sides, which gives us a is negative 3. So therefore, the equation for this graph is y equals negative 3 times x minus 1 squared plus 5. And that negative is good because the parabola is opening down, so we know it has to be negative. Okay. So that's it for today. That's all the examples you're getting. And that's basically all you're doing today. So I've created a practice sheet that has you going back and forth between equations and graphs. I have provided the answers at the end so you can check. And once you're feeling comfortable with that, give 5.5 quiz on Brightspace a try. Please let me know if you have any questions by using the envelope icon in the top right hand corner of Brightspace. See you next time, guys.